Okay, our guest is Xavier baseball coach Billy O'Connor. Billy, I'll start out with so you guys were in California playing a bunch of games for spring break when all of the shutdowns started. What was that adventure like?
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy experience, just how quickly things escalated. So we flew out there on the Thursday before spring break started. Coronavirus was I mean, it was in the news a little bit, but it wasn't to a point where it was really affecting anyone or anything at that point. All through that weekend, so we played Long Beach State the first weekend. There was no talk of cancellation. There's no talk of restricting attendance. It was just business as usual. So we played, lost Friday, lost Saturday, beat them on Sunday. So it was a pretty cool win. That Monday, things started to kind of gather steam a little bit, but still we were kind of, just going through our normal spring break trip. We took a trip to Dodger Stadium to go tour that. We went down to the Staples Center, downtown LA. We're walking amongst thousands and thousands of people, not knowing any better at that point. Momentum started a little bit more on Monday. Tuesday, we were supposed to play USC, but it was a rain day. We went over to USC to practice that day. Again, momentum was picking up a little bit at that point. Still hadn't really been any cancellations, but Tuesday, I think, was the day when they started talking about, NBA without fans, NCAA tournament without fans. Our game on Wednesday at USC was changed to no public allowed. We played Wednesday night at USC. Same thing, there's college baseball games where there's thousands of people. There's college baseball games where there's 20 people, so it wasn't all that weird to not have the stands full or anything. We played the game, we ended up losing, but after the game, heard that the NBA had suspended their season, and that's when it started to be like, oh boy, this is getting really, really real. Went to bed Wednesday night, still no changes. Thursday morning, woke up and could tell that the tide was kind of really turning at that point. They initially canceled our weekend at Cal State Fullerton. That was probably around 10:30 West Coast time. And by 12:30 or 1, our season had been canceled. So it was tough. It spiraled really quickly. And again, in the moment, like, all that matters to us is baseball. You don't have the perspective about what's really going on. You're hoping and praying that we can play baseball games, which in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. And the further away you get from it, the more you realize this is for the greater good. But it was a crazy experience because, first of all, we were so far away from home, out in California. And again, it's still part of the United States, but it's a different time zone. It's a different part of the country. Like, you felt really disconnected to whatever was going on back in Cincinnati, what was going on with Xavier, what was going on with the Big East Conference. So just constantly refreshing Twitter, checking in with our administration to see. And again, all on, and I'm not faulting anybody, but all on the week is like, no, just business as usual. Keep moving forward, yeah, maybe we'll have some restrictions, but we'll be good. We'll keep playing games. Spring season is going to happen. And then obviously things really took off and got to a point where everything was canceled pretty quickly. So as soon as we found out that our weekend was canceled, we bumped our flight up. We were supposed to fly back on a red eye on Sunday night, bumped it back to or bumped it forward to a Thursday night red eye. So we had to be out of our hotel by like 1, and our flight was at 10:30. So we had 10 hours to kill. Of all the days, it's just a torrential downpour in Southern California. We've got vans instead of a bus. So like, we're cramming our stuff in, trying to load the vans, just getting soaked everywhere. I mean, it felt like it was the end of the world. It was very fitting to what was happening that day with the weather too. But it was interesting, and then coming back that Thursday night on the way there, going through the airport, like, it was just any other day going through the airport. On the way back that night, on Thursday night, going through LAX, I mean, you saw masks everywhere, all kinds of precautions. It really felt like, man, it was kind of scary, walking through there. And again, I don't know how much of it was out there at that point. I don't know how exposed any of us were, but there was very much a heightened, knowledge of what was going on as we returned back home.
Wow. Well, let's touch base. I mean, you've had a pretty promising. I mean, I know it was a short season, but you had three freshman pitchers listed in D1 baseball's top 50 list. Lane Flam and Jack Hausinger are listed as top 50 sophomores, and Nick Swak as a top junior pitcher. That sounds like a pretty good set of weapons on a team. Talk about what went well this year and kind of some of the things that have surprised you.
Yeah, for sure. So, we played a really tough schedule. We were the number one strength of schedule in the entire country. So our record at 5-10 wasn't where we wanted it to be, but also you understand that it's not going to be 15-0 when you play against Ole Miss, College of Charleston, Long Beach State, and USC. So I was really happy with the way we played. I think we finished 23rd in the RPI nationally, which again, still a little bit early for that to have a ton of value, but it does show you, the teams you played and the teams you beat and what you've been able to accomplish so far. So I was excited about this crew, and that's part of what makes it really tough is that we were going through the ringer at the start, and I could see, when we went to Ole Miss, we played awful. They just dominated us, but shortly thereafter we play against Louisville, and you could see the strides that we made. And then the next weekend at Charleston, and then going out to Long Beach State, who was a top 25 team, and we truly could have swept them. We lost 2 out of 3, but blew a lead late and then lost a close game on some questionable calls, we'll say, on Saturday. So you can see how we were growing and the plan that we had put in place to play against this really tough competition, to test ourselves, to grow and become the team that we ultimately were going to become. You could see how that plan was taking effect and where we were heading, and I had just talked, it was so funny, we're talking all week out on spring break, there's no perspective the season's going to end. We're still talking about growing, and we're still early in the year, and this is where we're going to become. And, after we lost on Saturday at Long Beach State, I had a talk with our team, man, I love this team. This is a special group right here. The things that we're doing, it's going to work. Friday was tough. We came so close. Saturday was tough. We came so close. And then the next day on Sunday, we got a big win against a number 17 team in the country. And it was like, okay, we're getting there. We're not there finalized, but we were moving in that direction. So it was tough for it to come to a screeching halt there. But again, a lot of the pieces that you talked about, 3 freshmen, Lane Flam, I'm not sure how it's going to play out with the draft with Nick Zlock, if there is going to be a draft. So I think we're going to have a lot of that core back for next year. And I think the building blocks are there for us to have a really special year. It's crazy. This year basically turned into like a practice year, a trial run, and a lot of teams are going to look very similar next year. And I feel really good about our squad.
Got it. So, so talk about this for a minute. You've got what's going on with the NCAA player eligibility then, and what decisions do the players have to make, and what decisions do you have to make?
Yeah. So they've released some tentative feelers, I think, but the final vote is going to be next Monday, the 30th, on what the ruling is going to be. From everything I'm hearing, they're going to give a year of eligibility back to every single player, which makes sense because we have medical redshirt benchmarks, and those are you can't play in more than 30% of your games and you can't play past the halfway mark of your season. That's if you have an injury. Well, we're still under 30% and certainly not past the halfway point. So even if you view this coronavirus as a medical situation for everyone would fall under that medical red shirt category. So I think that's the right thing to do. It's the fair thing to do. The problem that the issues that it creates is now we have roster limits. In the past, we're only allowed to have 35 guys on our roster, 11.7 scholarships. Now, if you give these guys eligibility that we had kind of counted on them graduating and moving on, now if they're back for another year, it creates a kind of a bottleneck of, man, a lot of guys and not enough spots and not enough scholarships. So what I think they're going to do, what I've heard so far, is they're going to loosen the restrictions on the scholarship amount and the roster limit, and anyone that would have otherwise graduated, they will be non-counters towards that list. What's tough is, there's a couple issues that come into play there. The first one is that so each baseball team has 11.7 scholarships, but also there's a scholarship budget attached to that. So for baseball, it's somewhere around like 650,000 or something. So most schools, the NCAA says it's not going to be an issue. You can go to 12 or 13 or 14 scholarships for these seniors, but the issue is going to become with the school's budgets, and can they absorb another 50,000, 75,000, $100,000 in scholarship budget, and are they willing to do that? Not many schools have answers on how that's going to play out yet. The other issue becomes, there's seniors that, it's March, and a lot of these guys had kind of lined up jobs for whatever's life after baseball. So they get to a point where, do I want to forego that ability to move into the real world, start making money, and come back to school. Now, from where I sit, you have a very finite amount of time that you get to play baseball, and to pass up on that opportunity, I think it's tough, especially if they feel that they're in a good situation with good teammates and a good program and a great environment. And also the fact of, you're not just going to be wasting a year. You can start making progress toward an MBA or any sort of graduate degree that's ultimately going to pay off for you down the road. I know when seniors get to that senior year, a lot of times it's like, okay, I am done, and then I'll come back and I'll do grad school 5 years from now. But I think it's a lot easier to do that grad school right on the back end of your undergrad, because you're in that state of mind. You're young. You don't have obligations. Once you start getting serious girlfriends and wives and kids and jobs, that's when it gets really tough. And I will say that for myself. I had every intention to go get my graduate degree, and now I'm 33 and I still haven't done it.
I know it. I teach MBAs all the time, and it's a hard road out there. Yeah,
exactly. So from where I sit, I think it makes a lot of sense for our seniors to come back, and obviously we'd love to have them back. But that's kind of what they're balancing is, what do I do? What's the right thing to do? Do I keep playing baseball? Am I shortchanging myself and my future? It's a tough situation for a lot of guys, but it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out when they finalize all the rules and everything.
Gotcha. Yeah. So nothing on the. I mean, I guess do you guys get notified about the MLB draft? I mean, is that?
Yeah, ultimately they will let us know. It'll become kind of public knowledge, but at this point, that's another huge variable in this whole thing. I cannot imagine that it will go off as planned as it always has been. I think there's a scenario where it stays in June. I think there's a scenario where it goes July, August. I think there's a scenario where they don't have a draft. I think there's definitely scenarios and probably likely scenarios where they cut it down from 40 rounds to maybe 20 or 15 or 10. The MLB has put out a complete stop to all scouting activities. So for us, from a recruiting standpoint, the NCAA has said we can't go out and watch games, but we can continue to communicate with kids via text and call and email, all that stuff. MLB is done. They cannot talk to kids. They cannot talk to coaches. They cannot watch kids play. We were so early in the season that, yeah, there's some guys that they've known for 2 or 3 years that are going to be top round draft picks. But for a lot of guys, that junior year is so important to solidify where they stand from a draft perspective. And guys didn't get a chance to show that. For instance, a guy like Nick Zlock, Nick's a very talented pitcher. He didn't have a great freshman year, didn't have a great sophomore year, had an unbelievable start to his junior year, but it was only 4 starts long. So is he going to get his fair market value of what he could have gotten in the draft if he would have gone through that full season? Or is he going to be penalized because he only had, essentially 4 really good starts this year? And that's a situation I think a lot of guys are going to be in, that the idea is you're going to continue to progress, continue to develop and become a better player. And your junior year is kind of your showcase year if you're a real draft prospect. And so many of these guys have missed out on it that I don't think that Major League Baseball is going to be willing to invest the money that they normally would have in these juniors because they don't have the full track record of success that they would have if they would have got a full season. So it's an interesting situation. We've got a couple guys that are hanging in the balance that don't really know how it's going to go. Obviously, we'd love to get them back for next year, but we want what's best and help them to continue and further their careers.
Cool. We may have to talk about this again later as we get more information. Cool. All right. So you've watched a lot of games. I know you watch a lot of games that you're not even playing in. Who was looking good for the College World Series this year? Who out there impressed you or surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, Florida was off to a hot start. I think they only had 1 loss. Honestly, Ole Miss was really good. They were impressive to me, and they were a young team, so we didn't really know exactly how good they were going to be. But I'm telling you that they had the makings of a really special team. They just had so much lineup depth. A lot of times you'll face a good team, and it's 1 through 6 in the order. Those guys are really scary. But 7, 8, 9, maybe they're a little bit light. You can get some easy outs there. Ole Miss was 1 to 9. They had some real lineup depth, and that's a scary, scary team to face. And they had some really good pitching on top of it. So I was really impressed with them from a first-hand basis. Louisville's always good. Vanderbilt was off to a pretty good start again. I know the teams we play a lot better than I know the teams on the national scene, just because I spend so much time preparing for those. But following along, it looked like those teams had kind of separated themselves for the College World Series.
Got it. So, I know you and you're constantly doing baseball. What are you doing now for next season?
Just recruiting, basically. That's the only thing that we can do, and that was part of the thing that's tough for myself and some other coaches that I've talked to, is that we really don't have an off switch. Like, we're thinking 24 hours a day about how can we make our program better, how can we win more games, how can we help our guys develop. And when this kind of hit right away, it was tough because it was so sudden. Usually when you finish up a year, like, there's a routine you go through. You ramp up, and usually, hopefully, you make the conference tournament, and hopefully you make a run there, and hopefully you make a regional. But at the end of the day, your season ends when you lose your last game. And you know that you can think back and think, man, this was a great year. Or you can think, man, we should have done some things differently. We could have done this. But there's that mourning period of a couple of days where you kind of just decompress. You think about things a little bit. And then 2 or 3 days later, it's like, okay, it's time to go. Now it's time to go recruit. Now it's time to get our guys better. It's time to, maybe we were lacking this on our roster this year. We need to identify that in the recruiting process and make sure we've got that for future classes. What was tough about this is the season ended. You can't go out recruiting. There's no like planning for next year at this point, as far as like logistical travel and hotels. And so it was like, okay, what am I working towards right now? And yeah, you're ultimately working towards the future, but what concretely am I working towards? And that was a tough thing for me. And I talked to Coach Fleming with soccer. Same thing for him. Like, well, what are we doing right now? So the biggest thing right now is we just kind of buried our heads and focused in on recruiting and making some inroads with some kids, some young kids, trying to get a head start there, because that's really all we can do. It was tough because when this happened, you try to think what benefits can come from it. What's the positive from this situation, and for our guys, I think it was really good. It could have been really good. It can be really good because it's a developmental period. In the college baseball season, it's like fall. You're practicing. You've got some games. Then you have, November, December, which are good developmental periods, but also we're gone a lot. There's Thanksgiving, there's finals, there's Christmas break where we don't get a chance to work with them. And it's kind of, segmented a little bit. Come back in January, start the season. That goes through May. Then they go summer ball, and then you start that cycle again. So there's not that great developmental 2-3 month period for them to get stronger, for them to make changes, for them to get healthy even. But what's tough right now is that a lot of developmental resources that they would use aren't available, be weight rooms or cages or bullpens. So it's tough. It's a tough situation for them to try to find ways to develop during this period with the shortage of resources that are there.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. One of the things that we saw this year in college baseball that was kind of interesting is the both pitcher and catcher wearing the quarterback signal wristbands. Do you see going that way? Does it speed the game up? What?
Yeah, so we didn't use it because we don't call pitches from the dugout. We let our catchers call pitches. But I know one of my former assistants who's now at a different school, they call from the dugout still, and he used it, and he really liked it. I think it speeds it up a little bit. It takes kind of the middleman out of the situation. I personally am not for it. I'm a little old school when it comes to that stuff. And to me, a pitcher wearing a wristband and taking signs from the dugout, that's not really baseball. It wouldn't surprise me if it continues to grow. It wouldn't surprise me if they come out with some more stuff in the future. I know that there's an electronic wristband that a coach can input the sign. It's almost, like an Apple, like an iWatch or whatever.
Say throw strikes, darn it.
And the catch, and the catcher and the pitcher just look at it and says fastball away, and then you throw. So I don't know. It's a shame that we're at that point that sign stealing is that rampant that people feel like they need to have it. But, if you want protection, it makes a huge difference if the team knows what's coming or not, So if that's what you have to do to protect your signs, that's what you have to do.
Do you think that was an issue in college baseball, or is it more just to let's speed the game up?
Oh, I think it was a big issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff that's happened in Major League Baseball, I think it's every bit as rampant in college baseball with way less supervision.
Right, and you definitely that definitely benefits. I mean, that's one of the things that benefits the have schools more than the have
Yes,
nots.
for sure.
So if you can level that playing field,
Yep.
that's good for everybody. All right, so Chris Given, one of your stars last year, transitioned to the role on the coaching staff. How's that gone?
It was awesome. Chris was, as a coach, you identify guys when you're coaching them like, man, he's going to be a really good coach someday, because you have to carry yourself like a coach from the beginning to be able to have that ability. If you're the guy that screws around and gets in trouble, doesn't do what he's supposed to, doesn't work hard, you can't just flip that switch when you're done playing and say, okay, now I'm the guy that, you should model yourself after. I'm this beacon of, what it's like to be an adult, Chris was awesome. Chris was a coach from day one when he stepped on campus. So it was a really easy transition for him. He did so close with the guys without being, one of the guys still, but he did a great job of working with our guys and, being critical when he needed to be critical, being positive when he needed to be positive. I hope he plays baseball forever. But when he's done playing, he's going to be a great coach someday.
That's awesome. Well, he was one of my son Nate's favorites, so I figured he'd make
Yeah.
a good transition.
For sure.
So I guess you're missing baseball as much as we are in my house.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, hopefully we'll. What about summer ball for some of these kids? Do you think that's going to happen, or it's too early to say? I guess, right?
It is too early to say. I think it's definitely in jeopardy. Part of the issue becomes a lot of these summer ball organizations, they have to do the planning and the fundraising and figuring out all the logistics like now, to be ready for the end of May, beginning of June. So I think they're going to start making decisions pretty soon about whether they're going to have those leagues or not. I don't think that there's going to be any information in the next 2 to 3 weeks that says, man, summer's going to be back to normal, so that's what makes me concerned that I'm not sure that a lot of these leagues are going to happen.
Got it. Anything else for us before we wrap it up?
No, not really. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside.
Hey, thanks, Billy. Thanks a lot for taking your time out to talk to us.
Yeah, no problem.